Chris Chan's pursuit of getting a girlfriend has been the longest arc of his story. It started when he had a dream where he would give birth to a daughter named Crystal. From there, he knew he needed to meet what he called a boyfriend-free girl to marry and create a child with. Over his entire life, he attempted to court many different women to mostly failed results. Today, I will look through his history of love interests. Let's go. Chris's life growing up had many potential sweethearts. First, we have Sarah Hammer, a childhood friend who Chris kept in contact with as he was growing up. Sarah would eventually tell Chris she has a boyfriend though, a man named Wes Isley. Chris was very envious and resented him for years for this. Later he dropped this though as he created something called an attraction sign. The purpose of this sign was so he could hang it around the mall or at his college campus instead of approaching and interacting with girls directly. The sign reads like a resume when Chris is talking about himself. There's a lot to unpack here, but that last line about marrieds and blacks just confuses the shit out of me. Eventually, Chris would befriend a woman named Anna McLaren who wrote about him in her blog post, The Tale of the Crazy Pacer. Basically, Chris was pacing like crazy at the mall, stimming, and he approached her with a failed pickup line. He then awkwardly gave her his number and walked off. Anna is actually gay, so nothing came from this. Around the same time though, he met Hannah, someone some might consider a proto-troll. Hannah was a Starbucks worker who Chris asked out on a date, and they did indeed go on one. Chris was apparently taking notes during this date. Anyways, after the date, Chris has said that his heart went from 20% all the way back up to 100%. But Anna McLaren had to break the news to him. Hannah was a troll. When Chris asked Hannah about it, she confirmed this was the case. Chris yelled "No" on the top of his lungs, getting him banned from the mall temporarily. He claimed his heart shattered and went all the way back down to 15%. After moving on from these incidents, Chris befriended his next love interest, Megan Schroeder. Chris met Megan at the Game Place, a game and hobby store he often frequented. They became friends, with Megan not realizing what she was getting into. Chris would advance with creepier and creepier behavior, and each time Megan would reject him on this. Chris would develop the same interests as she would, such as Sailor Moon. Chris would enter a Parappa the Rapper contest where the #1 prize was a trip to Seattle for 2 and 2 PSPs as well. Chris blatantly did it for Megan. When he lost, he ranted about it on some forum and said that he even intended to get into her pants. Megan would eventually catch wind of this and gave Chris a piece of her mind. She said she was glad he lost and would never spend a night with him alone, also venting frustration at his harassment towards her. Unfortunately, that wasn't the end of the drama. Chris was caught up with some dastardly trolls who were sending him many pictures of dicks. So he really wanted to make sure that everyone knew he was heterosexual. He did this by drawing a pornographic picture of him fingering Megan. Yeah, not exactly a good move. Megan would see this and would essentially say she doesn't want to be friends with him anymore. Chris desperately tried winning her back in an email correspondence, but only made it worse. At one point he said that he drew the picture because he had a lot of pent-up sexual aggression, which has dark implications. They would lose complete contact after Chris was finally banned from the game place. After some trolling, a woman who claimed to be a big Sonichu fan contacted Chris. Her name was Blanca Weiss, and yes, she was a catfish. Chris claims to be fluent in both Spanish and German, so the trolls played into this by naming the catfish White White when translated. Chris never picked up on this, making his multilingual claims far less believable. Blanca had asked for a Sonichu medallion to be sent because the trolls told Chris they would steal his medallion and Chris vowed to never lose it. Well, he gave it to her and they destroyed it. In the beginning of 2009, Chris started talking to a girl named Julie, who is voiced by a 13-year-old boy. She was from a country called Mulvania, a complete fictional country that both Chris and even his father Bob believed it was real. This troll is known as Blue Spike. A famous clip is when Chris was having phone sex with her and Bob walked in, producing the famous internet lumberjack clip where he says, "Get away from that internet, I'm cutting it down." My favorite part of the clip was the billion Windows XP dings after Chris asks Bob to get away from him.
Can we get out of here? No, will not.
Chris also created an infamous video called "For Julie's Eyes Only," which is a video of him having sex with his inflatable sex doll while he's pretending she's Julie. In the video, Chris has several choice words, most famously calling out "Julie!" before finishing. This video was leaked to porn sites and eventually got millions of views. Chris's house would receive postcards of certain images from this video. Eventually, Julie's evil brother Max, who is also voiced by Blue Spike, kidnapped Julie and convinced Chris to drive all the way to Ohio to rescue her, with the address being a dead end, obviously. Blue Spike would successfully hack into Chris's Yahoo and PSN accounts and took the trolling way too far. He would coerce Chris into shoving his medallion into his anus, and eventually Julie revealed herself to be Max all along. Thankfully, the sick act was condemned by the trolling community. After, Chris decided to go with a real woman this time, a girl named Emily. She and Chris actually went on a date together, with Bob accompanying Chris. During this date, Bob actually did most of the talking while Chris was awkwardly holding her hand and touching her. Eventually, the two would walk off, and the man, the myth, the legend himself appeared. The man in the pickle suit. He approached Emily, asking to see Watchmen. And of course, Emily couldn't resist this handsome son of a bitch, so she accepted, walking off with him, leaving Chris dumbfounded. Chris would later lament this at home, saying, "The pickle man tricked me again." Chris would move on and befriend another woman named Ivy. Ivy is famous for drawing out the creepiness in Chris, as he seemed much more dedicated this time to trying to get her. He made a famous video where he would talk to her in an unsettling babyish way.
"Oh, we are going to have so much fun together when you and I are together."
Lots of content came out from this little era, including a new Christian and the Hedgehog Boys album, another tour of his house, that horrifying Fanta video, and others. He did all of these videos for Ivy. Most infamously, though, were the NSFW pictures. He would take pictures like this for Ivy, but he also did a series of nude videos for her, such as him dancing while naked, being in the shower while naked, and spanking himself while he was, of course, naked. Interestingly, Ivy asked for videos from him, but she never asked for any nudes. Chris did all of that voluntarily. Eventually, Ivy would fake her own death by game ending herself. In retrospect, Chris claimed he knew she was a troll. Next up, we have Casey. Chris had a long-term enemy known as Liquid Chris, who would impersonate Chris and claim he was the real Christian Weston Chandler. Liquid Chris's real-life girlfriend would also participate in the trolling by pretending to be Liquid's girlfriend. See, the story went like this. Liquid Chris had one day just straight up disappeared, and Casey began considering Solid Chris as a potential partner, so she began interacting with him. They actually went on a real-life date where Chris would be very inappropriate to her, touching her a lot and staring at her breasts the entire time. They would have many calls afterwards, with Casey actually trying to get Chris to improve his own life. Eventually, Casey brought on her father, who is played by another troll, where her father reprimanded Chris for his man-child behavior.
I am not lazy.
You're living with your parents and you don't have a job. How is that not lazy?
Eventually, the jig was up, and Liquid would come back into the fold while Casey was on another call with Solid Chris. Chris and Liquid would argue, and Chris even brought in his parents to fight his battle for him. Barb told Chris to hang up on that bitch, referring to Casey. Casey and Chris had one last phone call where she'd reprimand him before saying she would marry Liquid Chris instead. Chris would eventually start contact with a girl named the Wallflower. This was a real-life friend of Chris who he had romantic and sexual interest in, but she just wanted to be friends. Chris would make a Little Big Planet playthrough, creating characters of both him and the Wallflower, and accidentally revealed her full name. From here, she was doxxed. Many no-life trolls on the internet found information on her. The Wallflower would cut off contact with Chris entirely for this. Jackie was another troll who would contact Chris, claiming to already have a boyfriend named Lars McNulty, a man who is extremely obsessed with boats. Lars was actually voiced by the same troll as Alec Benson Leary. Jackie would get Chris to do a whole bunch of funny things, such as dressing up as Mr. Popo from Dragon Ball Z. She would also try to get Chris to do other humiliating things, such as drawing an image of men masturbating while watching her and Chris have sex, but he refused. She was also present for Chris's transition into a tomgirl, but she would cease the trolling act after Chris's father died. In 2012, Chris had gone through a trial after hitting Michael Snyder with a car. He was still a virgin at this point and he was afraid of losing it in jail, so he decided to take drastic measures to lose it before he was sentenced. He hired a prostitute named Mia Hamm. He was feeling very good afterwards as he was no longer a virgin with rage, just a non-virgin with rage. Thankfully, though, he never actually went to jail as his sentence was reduced to the level of a misdemeanor. At the height of Chris's tomgirl phase, he met a girl named Catherine on OkCupid. They went on a date to Applebee's with a man named Big Al accompanying Kat, identifying as her cousin. Kat had a lot of interaction with Chris, audio recording the whole date. According to Kat, Chris was once again inappropriate to her. They also visited Chris's house at the time and spoke to his mom Barbara briefly. Kat had stuck around Chris for a period of time, which included the horrifying period where Chris got a taint piercing. Eventually, she revealed herself to be a troll, bringing Chris's heart level back down to 15%. A couple of years later, Chris got into a Facebook relationship with a woman named Jessica Quinn. Jessica was a fat fetishist who influenced Chris to draw fat versions of his Sonichu characters. People to this day are still unaware if she was a troll or not. Eventually, Jessica would have her Facebook account hacked and blamed Chris for it. They would break up and Chris would have a legendary meltdown screaming,
You really blew it this time!
Shortly after, Chris would fall under the control of the Idea Guys. They manipulated him into believing that all cartoon characters were real, including his own. They implanted an idea in his head that never went away. He was in a polyamorous marriage with his own characters, Magi-chan, Krizel, Sylvana, and Mewtwo. He stated that this was the true end of his Lovequest, and it was happily ever after. Too bad it wasn't. In 2021, a big leak occurred. Chris had revealed to Null from Kiwi Farms that he was dating a woman who was older than him and once worked in accounting. Null was confused but didn't poke or prod any further. Little did we know, Chris was describing his own mother. He revealed this graphic info to a troll named Bella, who leaked it to everyone else. Barb and Chris have always had an uncomfortably close relationship. This was foreshadowed by Chris going to the high school prom and bringing his own mother along as a date. When photographed in public, Chris would always be touching Barb in an unusual way. Many people even accused Barb of being manipulative and abusive, coercing Chris into cuddling with her and sleeping in a room after Bob died. After getting leaked, Chris would eventually get arrested. In jail, he adamantly claimed the sex was consensual in a bunch of jail letters. He would get taken in for psychiatric evaluation, and then when he returned, he changed his story, saying that he never had sex with Barb, a story he commits to this day, even after being released from jail. Nowadays, Chris is currently with a woman that he's nicknamed Flutter. Details about their relationship are unknown. Chris claims that they're just friends, but there are images of him and her being very close. They were first filmed at a Food Lion together, and then again while shopping. Flutter goes by many nicknames such as the Cabbage Patch Kid or simply Egg. A running joke began where she manages to avoid getting any clear picture taken of her, leading people to speculate if she's underage, also due to her very short height. However, witnesses who've interacted with her and Chris directly say it was clear she was an adult when they were close up in seeing her. She is speculated to be Finnish, reason being is Chris and her have been photographed in Finland together. Right now, Chris is doing a very good job keeping her true identity under wraps. Perhaps he really did change in jail. Then again, he is under the influence of Prater right now, who's basically keeping him from harming himself. If he breaks away from them, however, I think it would only be a matter of time before he ruins yet another relationship. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. I covered a bunch of other lolcows and their love lives in a previous video which I'll have linked. In the meantime, I hope you have a great Valentine's Day with your loved one. If you're single or going through a bad breakup, however, don't fret. If Chris Chan can eventually get a girlfriend despite having the least amount of riz scientifically possible, then you definitely can. Have a good one.